And we are joined today by Lawrence Sprung, founder of Mitlin Financial and the author of Financial Planning Made Personal. Welcome. Good to have you with us today. We've got an interesting topic, actually.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So the trend here, Larry, is that digital payments have now outpaced cash because it's you got to deal with it. You got to organize it, and especially among Gen Z and millennials. So why do you think this trend is happening?
Well, I think the thing that's really accelerated the trend was COVID, right? Because people didn't want to deal with cash, didn't want to deal with currency, and the digital payments were just so much easier. So that really accelerated things. But I think just the ease of use, and even some arenas, sports locations, concerts now, none of them even accept cash. It's digital payments only. So I think that's why you're seeing this acceleration of use, especially recently.
So let's dig into, we're going to look both at the positives and the negatives and some of the possible ways to make the most of it. But let's start with the positives, because why not?
Sure.
There's increased security, global reach. As you mentioned, it just makes everything easier, potential for transparency. What do you see as the top benefits?
Yeah, I think it's just easier. You don't have to fumble through your wallet to find the right card. First and foremost, it's just really tap and click.
And we're talking about even like pulling out a card is old school. When we talk about digital payments, we are talking about not even pulling out plastic.
No, and you think about it, we used to have the tap, which came out, not too long ago, and that's already been replaced in a very short period of time. So I think that's a huge benefit. The other thing is a lot of these payment systems have their own tracking mechanisms. So it stores the receipt, it will code the payment, what it was spent for. So it just makes your life a little bit easier, which is what we're all looking for, right?
So obviously now let's talk risks of using digital payments.
Yeah, so I think the big risk is it is almost too easy to just click and make that payment, and you sometimes lose track of what you're spending on. So I think the important thing is to go back, and if you are making those spends via those electronic payments, go back to your bank account, make sure that you're budgeting for it, and make sure you're not blowing by your budget. And if it's a major purchase, maybe take 24 to 48 hours before you actually pull out the phone and double click to make that payment.
So I know you're a financial planner, but I'm sure in your work, there's a bit of psychology that comes into this, because it's not necessarily so easy to just make those changes when it is so easy.
Sure.
How do you suggest people really manage their budget in practical ways with this change?
I think you have to lean into it slowly. You don't want to just go, hey, I can make these payments and just double click and just go on a double click frenzy. Make sure that you're tracking it. Maybe for the first 6 months, track those payments every day to make sure that you're staying within your budget, just to get used to making the payments that way, right? I think if you think about it, used to be everything was done with cash. People used to have envelopes on the side, and they'd spend until they were out in the envelope. Then it went to ATM and debit cards, and that was even harder to track because it was easier to pay. And now it's made even easier. So the important thing is spend, but also keep the tracking mechanisms in place.
Can you share a couple examples from your clientele of how maybe they've been able to use it positively, but also, as you said, maybe got in trouble and realized they needed to get back to managing their budget?
Yeah, so I think the positive end of things is a lot more security, right? When you tap there, you're not giving the vendor your credit card. It's creating this virtual card number, so there's a lot more safety and security. Number two, be careful though with regard to the payments, because you could run the risk of having issues with regard to if the payment goes through and you want to challenge the payment. It's a lot more difficult if it's not a credit card that you're making that payment through. If it's one of those cash vendors, you want to make sure that you're in a place where you can challenge the charge if you have an issue with it. So you have to be careful with that.
So just to clarify on that, if you set up in your phone's payment system, Apple Pay or whatever the Android one is, and it's your primary card, your primary card is still processing that charge. And if there is an issue, it's not going through the phone system. It is still your primary card that you can, work with on resolving it. Okay.
Yeah, the credit card, you're still covered, right? By whatever methods and means they cover you by. But just keep in mind, some of those other payment processors that people use to send money back and forth very easily, where you can also pay vendors with, those are not as easily challenged. And a lot of times before you press send, it'll give you that warning saying, hey, make sure you're sending this to the right place, because it's not going to be easy to get it back. So you have to be aware of that. And then, lastly, you want to make sure that you're not making more charges. You can blow your budget very easily, and I think that's the biggest risk where people get in trouble.
So let's come back to the idea of the practicalities of budgeting, because a significant proportion of Americans don't have much in savings, potentially aren't doing much in the way of budgeting, and now that everything's digital, you don't have that easy mental process of just seeing it all laid out in front of you, as people did in years past. So, what do you recommend in terms of tools that are perhaps the easiest and the safest? Because there are ways you can link your bank account with apps, but there's risks potentially there, I guess.
So I think some of the easier ways and less expensive, if you're looking for, a lot of the major financial institutions, banks, have budgeting tools right within their platform. So right there, you can create a budget, you can code the expenses that you have, and it'll create that budget for you. Real easy and simple. You may or may not want to link up all your accounts because there may be a fear, hey, I don't want my financial institution, but I think that's a little bit unfounded. If you want to move away from that and have maybe a cost to it and maybe a little bit more control, you could look at some of the bookkeeping softwares that are available for businesses. Just because it's for businesses and bookkeeping doesn't mean you can't use it on the personal side. Look at your family as a corporation and set up those budgeting tools the same way that you would for a business. And it's simple because it all ports in. Once you code an expense in a certain way, it will remember it, and then it will code it that way going forward. And you can run profit and loss statements for your household very easily, on a monthly or regular basis.
You can become the CFO of your household. You've always come with the hot tips.
Great.
Really appreciate it.
There you go.
Lawrence Sprung with Mitlin Financial. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Yeah.